right, I'm coming to you live again from my kitchen table. This one is a really interesting one because this was one of my very first land deals. It might have been my first land deal. I called this one the secret sale, and here's why. I sent out my letters, I got some calls back, and I gave this guy an offer, and he had a little bit of back taxes, but I was surprised that he said yes. This was my first yes. I was super excited. So I took it to a title company because I'd already found the title company I was going to use. They did all the title work and I bought it. I bought it for $217.28. Now I'm going to hold this up so you can see it. I'm going to zoom up on it. Everything's well and good, right? I post it for sale and I send letters to the neighbors. And this is why I call it the secret sale, because I started getting calls from neighbors. They were pissed off and they were angry at me for buying this thing. And they're like, that guy knew I wanted to buy it. So it turns out there was this little turf war of this seller didn't live there anymore. Every time that he came home to visit, because I guess his house, it was in a mobile home park. So he had a mobile home there. He would come visit and all the neighbors knew he was going to be moving and not coming back at some point. So they had been bugging him to buy the property. And I guess there were two neighbors that hated each other and there was a third neighbor that wanted it, and it was all this drama, right? So when he got my letter, people sell for all kinds of reasons. That's why I call it the yard sale discount. It's like at a yard sale, when something's worth $50 and you sell it for $5 because you just want to get rid of it, that was this to a T. This guy did not want to deal with this crazy neighbors, so he sold it to me for $217.28. I was happy. So I did what the land program that I went through taught, and they said, before you list it for sale, send a letter to the neighbors. They might want to buy it. So I sent a letter to all the neighbors and I started getting phone calls. Initially, because I bought it for $200, I think I said I wanted to sell it for $2,500 if I could close fast. And so these neighbors, they start bidding each other up, and it got up to $5,000. And at that point, because I wasn't good at negotiating at the time, I didn't realize that was going to happen. I was just I kind of wanted to be done with it. I mean, $5,000 was great for me. They might have went up more, but I was like, look, you and the neighbor, they're talking to me. Everybody wants to buy it. Whoever can close on it fastest, they'll get the deal. And whoever can get me the money. And so this guy calls me and he says, I'll bring you cash and we can meet in a public place. In fact, if you're going to be in this area, I'll meet you, or I'll come to you. And so I said, well, where do you bank? He said, Wells Fargo. So I said, I'll meet you at the Wells Fargo bank. I met him at Wells Fargo. When I went in there, I felt like I was doing an illegal deal. I got to be careful with my words so YouTube doesn't shut this down. I thought I was doing something. It felt illegal because I get there and he's taking out cash from the teller and he's like, I'll be with you in a minute. And then he comes over, right? And we sit down at the table and he's like, okay, you got the deed, okay. And I was doing it myself. This is my first time doing documents, so I had done them all up. So I'm sitting there nervous, like he's gonna look at it and be like, this isn't right. He counts out $5,000, puts it in an envelope, says, thank you very much. I'd just seen him take the $5,000 out from the teller, so I knew it was real money. I got my car with $5,000 and I drove off. Fantastic, that's a good deal. $217 plus some taxes to $5,000. However, this is where I learned my lesson by the school of hard knocks. I sold the property then, so I had sold it to him. So I filed everything. And he kept calling me like, hey, when's this gonna be in my name? You said you were gonna file it. And I'm like, I sent it to the county. Counties can take a long time to file stuff. So eventually they got it filed and it moved over into his name. And he was like, okay, thank you. Everything was well and good till about 2 years later. I get a phone call from him again. He's irate. He's like, I went to sell it. The title company said this wasn't done right. It wasn't passed to me. It has these, and there was all this stuff that was done wrong when I did it. And it actually, thank goodness, it wasn't when I transferred ownership. It was done wrong initially. There was some stuff that was missing from like 10 or 15, 20 years ago, something like that. So I called the title company, and luckily my title insurance allowed for all of that to be fixed at no charge. The title company, I handed it over to them. I rerouted all his calls. I said, look, you got to call the title company. And so they took care of it from there. And then we kind of did like a reclosing and refiling using the title insurance. And then it was done and I didn't have to worry about it anymore. But what I learned from that is always close through a title company. Now, if you're dealing with really cheap land that's worth $1,000 or $2,000 or $3,000, there is a niche for that and you can do that and you can make your money in volume. But I just have kind of learned over time, the value is in finding the deal. Then you turn it over to the title company. They do all the paperwork. You show up and sign and give a check and you bought it. And then you find a buyer. and then you turn it over to the title company. They do all the paperwork. You show up, you sign, and you get a check. That's how I like to do it. I'm just going to show you this because I think this is funny. But when I sold it to this guy, I have my deed here, and I'm not going to hold the deed up because it's got like information on it and stuff like that, addresses and all that kind of stuff. But I wrote a little note to myself just in case it ever came back up because I was so uncomfortable at the bank. So I'm going to hold this up and you can look at it, but it says here, sold on 11/25/15. This is like my first deal. In afternoon, I didn't even put a time, at Wells Fargo in emails and Yahoo to remind myself that that's where all these email correspondence were. So anyway, the lesson that can be learned from this is always do your deals through a title company. So at the end of the day on this property, so let's just say I was all in for $1,500, I sold for $5,000, that's $3,500 profit, which is fantastic for a little bit of work. And if I had done it right without all these headaches, I would have made a little bit less profit because I would have closed the second deal with the title company, but I would have had a lot less headaches. If you enjoyed this video, check out my next video. It is about a property that I found a little place that I just kept going back to. So I'm going to share 2 properties from there. I'll share those, or at least one of them. Thank you for watching. God bless.